Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to NYMIR's cyber webinar on ransomware. My name is Bill Prone. I am the Managing Director of Dopkins and Company, Certified Public Accountants and Consultants. We're based in Buffalo, New York. You can see on the bottom of the screen, that's the skyline of Buffalo. In addition to our traditional accounting and auditing and tax work, we also do consulting for businesses on IT issues. We install computer systems. We deal with cybersecurity, and that's my role today, is to discuss with you cybersecurity and specifically ransomware. This presentation is sponsored by NYMIR, and we'll talk more about NYMIR services on cybersecurity and ransomware later in the presentation. A couple of housekeeping issues before we get started. The slide deck, if you want to download it, is available in the little widget that you see in GoToWebinar. There's a section that says handouts, and there's one handout there which you can download, and that will be the slides for you to keep. Hopefully this webinar will last about the presentation will be about 45 minutes, and there'll be time for answering questions at the end. Everyone is in muted mode, so no one can hear what you're saying or doing. But if you have a question, again, in that little GoToWebinar widget, there'll be a section, Ask a Question, and you'll be able to type in a question that you may have, and I'll see that question, and at the end, during that section for questions, I'll read the questions and provide answers if I can, and everyone will hear those questions and answers. Last thing is this webinar is being recorded. So the video of the presentation will be available through NYMIR's website at some point. We'll get it over to them today or tomorrow, and then it will be made available. So NYMIR will be contacting you probably and letting you know how to download the webinar if you want to share it with somebody else to watch. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk about ransomware. It's big in the news, and in particular in municipalities. In the month of July, 2 cities in Florida were hit with ransomware attacks. One paid a ransom over $400,000. Another one paid a ransom over $600,000. It's attacking schools across the country. In Louisiana, the governor declared a state of emergency when several school districts were attacked by ransomware. And it's attacking businesses of all types and all sizes. So it's been around for 2 or 3 years probably. The threat is growing, the risk is getting bigger, and hopefully what we'll do today is give you some tips as to Okay, I'm sorry about that. We had a slight technical difficulty and my voice got muted. So let me go back over these objectives quickly. What we want to cover today is what is ransomware, how it works, what you can do to reduce your risk of getting ransomware, and how to recover from a ransomware attack, what other things you might need to know about cybersecurity, ransomware, etc. So, start at the very beginning. What is ransomware? So it's a form of malware. Okay, that doesn't help much. What is malware? Well, malware is a contraction of the phrase malicious software. So anything that's malicious is bad, evil by intent, and software, as you know, is the code that makes computers work and do what they do. So malicious software is malware. It's a bad program that runs on your computer. Years ago, we called them viruses. A lot of people are familiar with the term computer virus. It's a form of computer virus. Or a Trojan horse program, and that term comes from the story of the Trojan horse, where something that looks like a gift, in the case of the story, the Trojans had a horse and was brought inside the city walls because they thought it was a gift, and out popped the soldiers and attacked the city. So it's something that is not what it appears to be, and is a way for something bad to attack your computer. So this is what ransomware is. It's like a whole bunch of other kinds of malware or viruses that come into your computer. So what is ransomware and how does it actually work? What does it do? Well, what happens is when the program runs on your computer, files, so data files, and programs like your water billing program or your word processing system or whatever programs you might have on your computer get encrypted. We'll talk in a minute about what is encryption and how that works. So the perpetrator, the bad guy, the guy that sent you this malware, offers to unencrypt the files for a fee. So he's holding your data files for ransom. So typically what would happen if you had a ransomware attack is when you tried to open a file, an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document or your email system or whatever it happens to be, it wouldn't work. It would go, doesn't work. And a message would pop up on your computer. Often they have a picture of a skull and crossbones or something like that, and it says, your files have been encrypted. If you want them back, you need to pay a ransom. And it'll give you instructions on what to do and how to do that. So the ransom is expected to be paid in a digital currency called Bitcoin. So you may have read about this or heard about Bitcoin. They don't want dollars. They don't want a check. They don't want a bag of money dropped at in a corner somewhere. They want digital Bitcoin. So it'll typically say pay 1 Bitcoin or 2 Bitcoin is the ransom. So you'd have to look up, frankly, on the day and see what Bitcoin is selling for. So I think today Bitcoin's selling for around $12 or $13 or $1,400. So if the ransom was for 2 Bitcoin, that would be about a $3,000 ransom. So in fact, you would have to contact a broker. We don't have Bitcoin. You don't have Bitcoin. Nobody has a Bitcoin in their pocket. You'd have to contact an investment broker who deals in Bitcoin, and they would sell you Bitcoin and they would transfer the money to the perpetrator. If you pay the ransom, if you choose to pay the ransom and you do pay it, hopefully then the perpetrator will send you instructions on how to unencrypt your files. So the real problem with ransomware is that it can spread through your network. So if you have a single computer, just you at home, sitting on your computer logged in to the internet, the only thing that's really at risk is your computer. If you're in your office and your computer is connected with the police department and the fire department's computer and the Department of Public Works, or even just the billing office within your municipal building, and those computers are linked together on a network where you share printers and you share the internet, that same ransomware that goes on one computer can spread to any computer on the network. So if you're saving a Word document on your computer and you can save it to the shared folder or the shared drive, all of the data on that shared drive is also at risk. So anywhere you can get to on your computer is at risk from that ransomware. It can spread through the same way that you share your files and save your files with other people in your office. So one individual can in fact be the weakest link and can put the entire municipality, all of your services at risk if one person mistakenly gets ransomware. So it's really important that everybody understand what the risk is and how to address it and what to do about it. So that's what we're going to talk about. So let's go back for a minute and explain what encryption is. So encryption is data, files, words that are scrambled so they can only be read with a key. So this is, you're familiar with this if you've ever watched a war movie and they're sending messages in code. So the picture at the top of the screen here is a German Enigma code machine from World War II. So what would happen is the message to the troops would be sent to this machine. Someone would type it out and it would translate the message into code so that when it was transmitted to the recipient, they would have to uncode it in order to read what it said. The picture at the bottom is a Little Orphan Annie decoder pin made famous by Master Ralph Parker in the movie A Christmas Story. So he waits and waits and waits to get his Little Orphan Annie decoder ring, only to find out that the secret message is a commercial for Ovaltine. So those are examples of encryption or code. So what happens in a ransomware attack is the program encrypts your files, makes it all scrambled with code, but you don't have the key. You're not given the key. And the ransom, if you pay it, will cause the perpetrator to send you the key, which allows you to decrypt your file. So encryption is not a bad thing. In fact, encryption is the recommended way to safeguard data. Whenever you log into a website and it has a little HTTPS at the beginning, or you see the little padlock picture on a website and the padlock locks, that means that that transmission is encrypted. And that's a good thing, because that means if you put your credit card in on that website or something, someone else is not going to be able to intercept it, because only that website and you have the key and you're able to transmit data securely. That's the way it's supposed to work. But like anything, if it's designed for good, it can be used for evil, and the perpetrators use encryption to encrypt your data and prevent you from getting to it. So it can be used to protect your data. It can also be used to hold your data hostage. So how do you get ransomware? Well, it usually comes, most common way is through an email, known as a phishing attack. So a phishing attack is when you get an email that appears to be something that it's not. So it's a Trojan horse, the story of the Trojan horse. So an email comes in and it's from Xerox and it says your bill is attached. Well, if you have Xerox copiers that you're leasing in your municipality, you might think, oh, that's the bill, I need to open that. And you click on the attachment, and the attachment is in fact a ransomware program, and it starts to run on your computer. Or it comes from somebody that's saying, here's my resume, somebody looking for a job, and they send an email to HR, my resume is attached. And you click on the resume, and lo and behold, it's a ransomware attack. So most common way that ransomware comes through to an organization is through email, through a phishing attack. Can also get it from downloading a file from a website or whatever. So if you're really, really paranoid, you may not want to download my PowerPoint slides that I have included here in this presentation, because are you really, really sure that I'm not sending you a ransomware? Now, I promise I'm not sending you a ransomware, but you need to be careful when you download a picture from the internet, a video clip, audio. Did it come from where you really think it came from? So what typically will happen is you'll get an email from somebody, doesn't have an attachment in it, but there's a link. So it could be an email that comes to you from New York State Transportation. So it's your toll, your E-ZPass toll bill, right? It says, dear customer, you are now past due on paying your E-ZPass. So click this link to log into E-ZPass and pay your bill. So you click on the link, and in fact what it does is it downloads ransomware. So phishing exploits will typically tell you if you really thought that was from E-ZPass, what you should do is not click on the link. You should go to E-ZPass's website, log in, and in fact see if you pay your bill, because then you know you've gone to E-ZPass's website. You're not following some link that you're not quite sure of. So that's another way you can get it. We've also seen examples of just getting it from an infected website. We had an example of a client who was trying to make dinner reservations in a restaurant, and they went to the restaurant, looked at the pictures, wanted to see the menu, so they clicked on the link that said, here's our menu, and in fact that link downloaded for them ransomware and encrypted the computer. So you can get it from a bunch of different places. So practicing really safe cybersecurity is one good way of protecting yourself against ransomware. When it happens fast. So it's not like you'll know that it's underway and you can stop it. Typically, your own computer would be encrypted within 2 or 3 minutes. So once it happens, you can try to shut your computer off. It may stop it. If you instantly recognize it and pull the plug, you might only have some of your data encrypted. But it's really not practical to think you're going to see a ransomware underway and you're going to stop it by getting in the middle and preventing it. But having said that, if you're aware that something's going on, if you click on an attachment of an email and funny things start happening, it looks weird, not a bad idea to pull the plug on your computer, because if it wasn't weird, you can always plug it back in and carry on. And if it was, you may have stopped the ransomware from spreading. And so that's not a bad thing to do. The real answer, the get out of jail free card, is to have a good backup. Because what the ransomware does, they don't steal your data. Your data has not been taken. So it's not considered a data breach, but your data has been made unavailable to you. So the best thing you can do is simply ignore it and restore your backup. So that's literally the solution to ransomware, is to have a good backup. The articles that I read relating to these ransomware attacks that took place in Florida, all the organizations say, I have a backup, I have a good backup. And yet when it comes time to need it, we find out for some reason it's not a good backup. So what I would suggest is you make sure that you have a backup, that it's current, meaning last night or yesterday, not current within the last 6 months, current within the last day or maybe a week. That it's complete, meaning you back up everything, every single computer. So if you have a network and you save data on your shared drive and you back up the shared drive, but you don't back up everybody's local C drive on their laptop computer or their desktop computer, then you're not going to be able to recover the files on those laptops and desktops. And that could be a big piece of your important data. So you want to make sure all your files of all computers are backed up. And you want to store your backup off-site and offline. So a lot of organizations will say, well, what I do is every night I copy all my files from my computer to Sally's computer, and she sits in the office next to me, so that if my computer crashes, I have my data. That's a true fact. However, if Sally's computer is linked to your computer and you get ransomware, she will too, and you'll lose the backup. Likewise, if you copy the data from your server to the server at the Department of Public Works, and they're on the same network, the ransomware could spread there. So what we find is that a lot of people think they have a good backup. In fact, it works every day and there is a backup, but it's not offline. It's not separate from their system, so that when ransomware attacks, it attacks the backup as well. So you should, when you're looking at your backup, it depends on what you're trying to back up. If you were to copy your data to the server at the Department of Public Works and your building burns down, that's a good backup because their building didn't burn down. But it's not a good backup for ransomware because their network was connected to your network and the ransomware spread. So I think you really have to re-ask yourself the question, what is our backup? What are we backing up? When are we doing it? And how does it work? To assure yourself that you can protect yourself from the threat called a ransomware. So you want to physically disconnect. So really an old-fashioned tape backup, not a lot of people use it anymore, but we're starting to see IT departments bringing back tape backup simply because it's a good protection against ransomware. You can take the tape offline, take it home, put it in a bank safe deposit box, and it's safe from ransomware, and then you can go, if you get a ransomware attack, and recover from that tape. One of the stories in Florida was of an organization of the city, and they had digitized, they had scanned and digitized all their old paper records, meaning birth certificates and mortgage data, all that stuff was scanned. And it took 7 years to scan that all onto the computer. And when they got ransomware, that all got encrypted. Well, that stuff doesn't change. So if you had scanned it all and you made a backup that day onto tape or a portable hard drive and put it somewhere, that backup is going to be good for years because that archival data is not changing. So do a backup, do it once and save it. What we find is people are copying their data to the Department of Public Works, and they find out that it takes too long to copy all this archive data, so they just stop doing it. And lo and behold, that's not there to recover from ransomware. So you really have to think that process through, talk to your IT support people and have that discussion. You can just save it in the cloud. You can use something like Carbonite Backup, or if you have a Dropbox account or an Amazon Web Services account, you could do a backup, save it in the cloud. It's off your network and therefore safe from ransomware. So backup is really a good thing to think about. And you got to think about, can I restore that backup? Try it once a month and see if it's really good and I can restore it. But even if you've got a good backup that you can restore, you need to test, is it really offline? Is it safe from the spread of ransomware? So I want to go through a few ideas of ways that you can help reduce the likelihood of getting ransomware. You can't stop it. You can't stop any kind of burglary or theft, or, I mean, you can put controls in place to help protect or minimize the risk, but to be perfectly honest, you're not going to prevent it, but you can reduce the likelihood. So what things can we do? You should have a firewall on your network or on your computer. And in this picture, you see your computer on the left, your computer, your network, your wireless antenna. And on the right, that globe symbol is the symbol for the internet. And the internet is what you're on, where these risks are coming from. So the firewall in the middle is taken from the same term that you would have in a building, where I've got rooms in a building and fire code says I need a fireproof wall in between this building and the building next door, or this room and that room, or this floor and that floor, so that if a fire breaks out, it does not spread. So in computer terms, a firewall is a piece of equipment that sits between your network and the internet, or your network at municipal headquarters and the Department of Public Works, that prevents certain things from going back and forth. So ideally, you would set up a firewall and you'd block anything that's not necessary. So if you were backing up your files to the Department of Public Works, you could put a firewall in between, and you could say the only thing that's allowed to go through this firewall is the backup file. And that could help prevent the spread of ransomware to that other section of your network. So anything that's not necessary, you turn off. A good example is foreign countries in which you have no business. So I think you've got an advantage being a municipality in the state of New York, that it's probably pretty likely, although maybe not guaranteed, but pretty likely that all of your customers, meaning your citizens, your residents, all of your employees, and many of your vendors are going to be local. They're going to be New York State, or at least United States, or at least the United States and Canada. So there are 196 countries in the world. Is there any reason why you need to get messages from Russia or North Korea or China or Brazil or South Africa? Probably not. So if you say to your firewall, do not allow traffic into my network or out of my network to all these other countries except the US and Canada, you're going to reduce by a huge amount the likelihood that you're going to get ransomware from those locations. You might still get ransomware from a US location, but truth be told, that most of this stuff is coming from a foreign country. The reason is it's a crime, and if it takes place in the United States, the FBI will eventually figure it out, find the perpetrator, and arrest them. The FBI has no jurisdiction in these foreign countries, and so most of these attacks do in fact originate in foreign countries, and the most common places are Russia, North Korea, and China. So you can reduce a lot of the threat if you stop those countries from coming to your network. If you don't know how to do that, and you probably don't, you would talk to your IT provider, whoever you get your computers from, whoever you use for your internet. You could say to them, I want a firewall and I want to block countries, and they would know what that means. That firewall can also allow you to block your users, yourself, your employees, from going out on your internet to places they shouldn't be going. Now, obviously, you might want to block pornographic websites, you might want to block online gaming websites, because these are all sites that could be malicious and could get ransomware on your computer. So if there's no reason to allow people to go do online gaming while they're at work, stop it, turn it off. It reduces the risk that you're going to face. Shopping. Do you allow your employees to go to eBay while they're at work? I mean, it might be nice to do that, but it's posing a risk to you. So you really have to stop that sort of thing. You have to tell people, if you want to do that, you have to do it on your phone. You cannot do it here. We're going to stop it. So eliminate the things that could be bad opportunities. Email. We already said most of the ransomware attacks come via email. So you should have, however you get your email, whether you use Gmail or you have your own municipal account or whatever it happens to be, use Outlook 365, whatever it happens to be, you should have a spam filter in place. Now, what a spam is, junk mail, right? So that blocks all the advertisements and stuff that come in. So it doesn't necessarily block ransomware, but it could. It'll block any suspicious looking emails, and that suspicious looking email could include one that has ransomware. Some spam filters will check if there's attachments and look at what those attachments are. So if somebody sends you a PDF file, you know, they scanned a picture of their application or their license, or they send you a resume, and that file isn't really a PDF file, your spam filter could block that. So that's how a lot of the ransomware comes to you, is through those attachments. So it will help eliminate that. It can also scan for a spoofed address, meaning that when the email comes to you, it is not coming from who it claims to be. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a further slide. You should also have endpoint protection on every one of your computers. So what is that? It used to be known as antivirus software. So you might have Norton antivirus or McAfee antivirus or Kaspersky or one of these different products. Usually you'll see it, like in this example, at the bottom right corner of your computer. You'll see a little icon that says, I'm running, in my case, I'm running Komodo Endpoint Protection. So there's something that says it's running. So if you buy a computer today, if you go to Best Buy or you go to Costco or you go anywhere and you buy a computer, they typically come with endpoint protection installed, some brand of endpoint protection. And you'll get a 6-month trial or whatever it is. So you need to make sure that you have it installed on every computer, that you've renewed it when the 6 months is up, and that you continue to have it running. It'll go out and check for updates. It'll update itself, and it will be scanning your computer and trying to stop known malware. So not all ransomware is, quote, known malware. It could be unrecognized and you could still get it, but a lot of it is, and your endpoint protection will stop that. So it'll be running antivirus protection. Usually they'll allow you to say, do not run any program that I don't recognize. So it'll let you run Excel, it'll let you run Word, it'll let you run your water billing system if you tell it what that is. But if it doesn't see the program in the list of good things, it can stop it. So most of us should already have some form of endpoint protection on every computer. You may not have it configured properly. You may not have it updated. You may have it on many of the computers, but not all of the computers. As we said earlier, on one computer, it's the weakest link. You need to make sure it's on every computer. Some endpoint protection products may have firewall software built in. So if it does, that may solve your question from the previous slide, do I have a firewall? So this can also provide that function for you. So another thing you should do is you should teach your users, your employees, how to spot a phishing attempt, how to see when an email has been spoofed. So here's two different websites, two different email addresses, billprone@california.com. So that's somebody I know, they're my vendor, I expect an email from them. But if you look very, very closely, that's not California, it's CA1IFORNIA. So if the font is Times New Roman, which this happens to be, a 1 and a lowercase l look exactly the same. You can tell, if you look really, really closely, that the space around the 1 is a little wider than the space around the L. So there are ways to see, oh, wait a minute, this looks a little funny to me. So there's a whole lot of things you can do to teach your users how to spot a phishing attempt. And NYMIR has on their website, on their online university, some courses on preventing phishing. So you should check that out. So this is what these things are. They have things on security awareness, use of social media. So that would be Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, those sorts of things. What you can get ransomware if somebody claims to be your friend on Facebook and you get an email claiming to be from Facebook saying so-and-so wants to be your friend, or your friend on Facebook just posted a picture of you, check it out, click here. So those are ways that you can get ransomware. So all of these security courses and tools that NYMIR has on their online university can be, if you learn what those are and apply them faithfully, they can help you not get ransomware because they're going to save you from those things coming in. Another thing to look for is your browser. If you're using Internet Explorer, or you're using Edge or Firefox or Chrome or whatever it happens to be, you'll typically see most websites have a rating. So in this example, we see two things happening on NYMIR's website. First of all, there's a padlock, and you see the letters HTTPS indicating that there's a secure encrypted connection between you and NYMIR. So that's a good thing. Somebody else is not intercepting your password as you log into NYMIR or what you're doing. The other thing is that padlock is green. So that indicates that a web service has rated NYMIR and considers them safe. So a padlock and a green padlock are two indicators that this is a site you can trust. If it's not, the padlock's not locked, or if the site appears in red, that would be indicators that this is an unsafe website. And if you train your users, don't go there, get out, you could protect yourself from a ransomware attack or any other cyber threats. You should have cyber liability insurance. NYMIR provides that for you. You need to talk to somebody at NYMIR if you want to know more about the coverage and what you have and that sort of thing. But cyber liability insurance will do a couple of things. If you want to pay the ransom, they'll help you pay the ransom. If you don't pay the ransom, it'll help reimburse you for the costs you have to recreate your data, to restore your backup, etc. Another thing you should have, at least an awareness of a good cyber law lawyer. So the Corporation Counsel of your municipality may not be an expert in this area, but you should at least know somebody. Because if you have a ransomware attack, you still need to determine under New York law, is what happened to me a breach? Do I have to make notification? What other things might I need to worry about? What's the best way for me to go public with the facts I need to go public with? A cyber lawyer will be able to provide that advice, as will the coaches that you'll have from NYMIR when you contact them about the claim you want to make. You'll also want to know about a forensic analyst. Typically, if you have a cyber lawyer, or NYMIR may put you in touch with somebody, if you have a ransomware event, they will be able to come in and determine what happened, when did it spread, how far did it spread, is there any data that was compromised or not compromised? In other words, if the ransomware people came in and encrypted my files, did they steal them before they encrypted them? And now I have a risk of that data being made public. A forensic computer analyst will be able to answer those questions, and their services are not free, and your cyber liability insurance covers those. The cyber analyst, the forensic analyst, will also say to you, I can certify that now after this event, your network is clear. The virus has been contained, and you don't want to take a computer, fix it, put it back on, and have it reinfected. So they will be able to do all that stuff. So they're all a necessary part of the event if it should happen, God forbid. So let's talk a bit about what would happen if you get attacked. I've already said there's no guarantees that you can prevent this. There's no, you can reduce the risk, but it may still be nearly inevitable that something will happen. So what can you do? So the first is your response. This is what you need to do immediately, right away, as soon as you notice what's happening. This is the response. So I can tell you the FBI and in fact the US Conference of Mayors have advised, do not pay the ransom. This is like our nation's policy of not negotiating with terrorists. Somebody does a bad thing and you pay them in a response, that's going to encourage them to keep doing bad things. So if you stop paying the ransom, if everybody stopped paying the ransom, ransomware would start going away. So the FBI advises do not pay the ransom, and the US Conference of Mayors has also said the same thing. Sorry, next. Contact NYMIR. This is NYMIR's number that if you have an incident, if you have a claim that you want to report, you should call this number. And NYMIR's their resources will come to bear. They'll put you in touch with attorneys. They'll put you in touch with resources that you can use to help respond. So first of all, don't pay the ransom, or if you choose to, go ahead, but contact NYMIR. Contact an attorney, whether it's through NYMIR or some other source. Get legal advice, because there are a lot of laws that apply to data breach, and a ransomware is typically not a breach because the data is not stolen, it's just encrypted. But that's a legal question. It depends on the wording of the law. Again, you're relatively lucky in that you operate in New York State, so you're really only subject to New York law. The laws on data breach and cybersecurity are different in every state. So if you were General Motors, you'd have a lot more different laws to worry about than if you're a municipality in New York, but you still should find out what laws apply, what laws don't apply, what notifications might we need to make, etc. Typically, the purpose of ransomware is not to steal your data. That was true a couple of years ago. There were hackers that tried to hack in and steal your credit card data, or your healthcare information, or your social security number, or your residents' names and addresses. The problem is, if a hacker stole that stuff, they had to sell it to somebody. They had to find somebody who wanted to buy it in order to do something with it. If you steal a credit card number, you got to go out and buy something, buy a set of golf clubs or whatever with that credit card number. And now what? Now I got a whole room full of golf clubs. Now they got to sell the golf clubs. How do I get money? So ransomware is, I don't need to steal the data. I don't even care if the data is valuable. All I need to know is that you care that the data is valuable. And if you care it's valuable, you might pay me ransom, and I have cash. So the hackers prefer ransomware because they get money out of it. So it's not usual that they try to steal the data, but it's not guaranteed. So in your response, you need to determine, did any data get stolen in addition to being encrypted? Because remember, the attacker has the encryption key. So you can't say, well, the data is encrypted, it doesn't do them any good. No, they can decrypt it. You can't. So you need to find that out as well. Once you've gotten through the immediate question of what do I do, now you've got to start to recover. So whether you've paid the ransom or you didn't pay the ransom, you got to go on to the next step. So in either of those cases, you're going to have to erase all your computers because the ransomware could still be on your computer. So you pay the ransom, the perpetrator gives you the key, you unencrypt all your data, and next week he re-encrypts it again because you haven't removed it. And then you got to pay the ransom all over again. So this could be a vicious cycle. So what you'll want to do is wipe out, literally erase everything on those computers so that the malware is gone. If you're going to pay the ransom, you'll probably have to figure this out, what the order is. I would need to unencrypt all the files to recover them, then back them up somewhere, then erase all my computers, then restore my files and make sure the malware is gone. If you're not going to pay the ransom, and the reason you wouldn't pay the ransom is you've got a good backup, again, you're going to have to wipe out all your computers, get rid of the ransomware, make sure it's not there, and then restore. So that's not going to happen instantaneously. That might take you a week. That might take you a month to do. So regardless of whether you've got a backup or you don't, at the very, very least, ransomware is going to be an interruption. And you'll take some time to recover whether you pay the ransom or you don't. It helps if you've already decided what are our most important files. In that example I gave earlier, if you have scanned copies of birth records and stuff, you might say, well, we can afford to wait to the very end to restore those. We really need to get the water billing up and running or whatever it happens to be. So you should have, before you have any attack, is a list of what things are the most important in what order, because when I'm restoring them, it's going to take time. What do I need done first? What do I need? I might want email back up and running the first day, and I need water billing up and running by the end of the month, and I need archive records up and running by the end of the year, something like that. So it would be helpful to know that order. And last thing you want to do in recovery is, if God forbid it happens to you, what do we determine here? You need to go back and find out, how did that ransomware get to your computer, and make sure that now it's stopped from happening again. I don't want it to happen over and over again. What lessons have I learned, can I learn from this unfortunate thing that happened to us? NYMIR has a bunch of things out on their website and available, and you can contact any of the people at NYMIR, Kevin Crawford or Susan O'Rourke, Karen Buckley, any of your representatives, the whole team at NYMIR would put you in touch with all of these tools. They have an online university we saw earlier. They have cybersecurity guidelines with some policies you can have, a policy for notification if you had a breach, a ransomware bulletin. They have a self-assessment tool that you can use to help you determine, are we really at risk or are we not? How prepared are we for an attack? Social media policy. So NYMIR has a lot of great resources out there for you to use, and you should take advantage of those resources. Got a couple of questions that have come onto the screen, so I want to this is from Karen at NYMIR, who's saying, just to make sure, tell everybody that if they are attacked, they should call NYMIR, that they can't pay the ransom without getting permission from NYMIR to say, we'll reimburse you if you do that. Okay, so you have a policy, you have coverage, but you can't just do things without telling them. So my experience has been, even if you think you got ransomware and you're not really sure, as I said before, if something looked funny, I would contact NYMIR and say, something looked funny, what should I do? And so you've got a notice of claim in there, and you can get permission from them if you do get ransomware of how to go about paying it. What we're seeing in the cases of these two municipalities in Florida, the ransoms were very high, $600,000, $400,000. That's not typical, I can tell you that. The reason is the ransomware perpetrator wants you to pay it. So they frankly probably don't even know who you are. They put out this ransomware tax. They're out there in the internet, and you either get it or you don't get it. And if you do get it, they don't know if you're a little old lady at home, or you're a bank, or you're a municipality, or you're a hospital, or you're an accounting firm. They have no idea. They're just hoping that whatever it is that got encrypted, you'll value it enough to pay the ransom. So if the ransom is too high, if the price is too high, you're going to look for alternatives. So usually the ransom is relatively small, maybe $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, in which you say to yourself, well, it's a lot of money, but it's going to cost me that much money to wipe out all my computers and restore all my data anyway, so maybe I'll pay it. So the coverage you'll need to talk to NYMIR about and make sure that you've got that coverage. Someone has commented here, one great resource we have found after we had an issue with our website, MSISAC. So that's MS-ISAC. And they have a local office in Rensselaer County. So there are a lot of local, depending on where you are in New York, there are forensic analysts that will help you. There are law firms that have experts in this area. There are firms like ours, Dopkins and Company, that can assist you. So there are a lot of resources out there to help you get through an event if it happens. Much better answer is utilize these tools that we've talked about. That most of us hopefully already have some sort of endpoint protection on all of our computers, already have some form of firewall on your computers, already have some form of backup, and already have some coverage from NYMIR. So all these things shouldn't be new to any of us, but you may not have the backup configured the right way. You may not have your firewall blocking certain other countries. You may not have your antivirus, your endpoint protection software up to date or installed on every computer. So hopefully these things are not new. They're just, you need to take what you already have and go revisit those controls and those protections that you've had and see, are they still helpful in a ransomware attack. Okay, I've got some information. I am going to try to send this to all. Control-C. Not sure how to do that. Got a message here. This is the contact information for 24/7 Security Operations Center, Multi-State Information Sharing and Analytics Center in East Greenbush. So this is some information that was passed on by one of the listeners. I will make sure that we forward that on to everybody. Looks like a useful resource and tool that you can use. So we'll make sure, I'm not exactly sure how I can copy and paste that onto this webinar, but I'll make sure everybody who's registered, we have your email addresses, we'll send that out. We got 5 more minutes to respect the time frame that we've allotted for this. If anyone has any last questions and you want to put them into the question thing, we'll try to answer them. I think ransomware, I don't want to bash NYMIR or any other insurance companies, but I can tell you that ransomware did not used to be covered. The ransom itself did not used to be covered by most cyber liability policies. And as a result, a lot of organizations, if they got ransomware, I'm talking 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, wouldn't pay the ransom because it's just out-of-pocket money. And the likelihood that if you pay the ransom, the likelihood that you'll actually get a legitimate key that will allow you to effectively decrypt the data is pretty, or at least was pretty small. It was about 10% likelihood. Insurance companies across the board in the last year, year and a half, have started covering the ransom as part of the coverage. So what happens now is a lot more organizations are willing to pay the ransom because they're going to get reimbursed for it. The fact that they're more willing to pay the ransom, ransomware attackers, which were on the decline, is now starting to rise again because it's good, cheap, easy money. I'm virtually guaranteed if I hack into your business and you get ransomware that you're going to pay the ransom, and that check's going to come not from you but from your insurance company, and I have no concern that that's not going to clear. I got good money. However, flip side is also true, is now that ransom people are becoming more likely to pay ransom, the ransomware attacker has to step up his game and make sure that he decrypts your files. Because if word gets around that he's not going to decrypt the files once you've paid the ransom, people are going to stop paying the ransom again. So we've seen the likelihood that you'll get the files decrypted if you pay the ransom has gone up to about 50%. So again, it's those circumstances that have prompted the FBI and the U.S. Council of Mayors to encourage people, don't pay the ransom, because people are becoming more likely than they would have been not long ago to do it. So they want to remind you, don't pay the ransom, because you're funding criminal activities. I think my personal experience is if you do pay the ransom, they probably put a gold star next to your name, the criminal people, and say, here's a good target, because the last time we attacked them, they paid the ransom, so let's put them at the top of our list to try again. So I think it's important that you, whether you pay the ransom or you don't, that you try to determine how you were attacked and stop it if you get attacked. But if you choose not to pay the ransom, you can effectively get away if you've got a good backup, and you don't have to worry about funding that criminal activity. And you're sending a message: if you attack me again, you're still not going to get paid. So don't waste your time and effort. So ransomware, as I said, is a growing activity, and everyone is at risk. Every organization, municipalities are a growing target, simply because a lot of small municipalities haven't stepped up their backup, haven't renewed their antivirus or endpoint protection, may not have a firewall. These kind of simple controls can help you, but if they know you don't have that, or they suspect you don't have it, you're a good target for ransomware. So I think we're now at the outside limit of our time. I'd like to thank you all for your patience in watching this webinar. Hopefully you've learned something, something that you didn't know before. One of those things will be that I think you're probably closer than you might have thought in terms of protecting yourself by reviewing your existing backup, reviewing your existing endpoint protection, putting a firewall in place, and taking advantage of the NYMIR resources for training and other things that are available to you, and that'll help you reduce by a big margin the risk of ransomware in your municipality. So thanks again on behalf of Kevin Crawford, Susan O'Rourke, Karen Buckley, and the whole team at NYMIR. This is Bill Prone from Dopkins and Company in Buffalo. Wish you a pleasant rest of your day. And if you would like any more assistance, contact either NYMIR or you can reach out to me as well. Thank you very much.